as this theme of the conference is remix your reflex, I know some reflexes that need to be remixed, because I'm talking as an organization scientist to a lot of managers about errors that occur in their organization and how they react to it. And I can tell you there are very interesting reflexes there. We tend to call them organizational culture, but that doesn't really matter here. Actually, when I'm talking to managers, I'm usually recycling old ideas, very old ideas, 2,000 years old, for instance, because a Roman philosopher called Seneca used to write a famous sentence that we all know, and it is, "To err is human." It's very mild. Well, he wrote it in Latin because his English wasn't very good. But it's a very mild statement. And but before I go into that, I first show you one slide. I only brought one slide, which is against my nature because I usually use the method death by PowerPoint. This is the definition of an error. A scientist can't live without definition, so I have to give a definition of an error. So a very neutral definition, a deviation between the intended and actual outcome of an action. So think of that when you drop a bottle on your toe, it's just a deviation. Errors are unintentional, so if you do it intentionally, then it's a violation or a foul. They only occur in goal-directed action. So perhaps when you're sleeping and you hit your partner by accident, then you should be forgiven. And errors are potentially avoidable, so you can do something about it. One of the interesting parts of the definition is that there is no reference to consequences of errors at all. So we, as scientists, argue that there are no big mistakes. There are just mistakes. For instance, when a nurse administers a wrong medication to a patient, it can have lethal consequences, but it can also have no consequences at all. But still, the person who makes the error has to rethink his or her way of working, and hopefully, when the organization knows of it, then they also try to adapt their working practices. So let me get back to the statement, "To err is human," because when I talk to managers about it, and also to other people, they usually nod their head in approval, saying, "Oh, of course, that makes sense." But they don't always act on it, because many managers still punish their employees when they make a mistake, and they even sometimes send them away, they fire them. But of course, that doesn't solve the error. Granted, other managers are very tolerant towards errors and forgive those who make them, but still do nothing. That doesn't help very much either. It's a bit better for the employee, of course, but it doesn't solve the error. But then, let's go back to the term "to err is human," because sometimes sayings lead a life of their own. And we forget where it comes from, but probably few of you knew that it came from Seneca. But especially in this case, it's a pity, because Seneca didn't only write "to err is human," he added a second sentence to it, allegedly. And the second sentence was, "To persevere in erring is diabolical." So, and that is what managers usually achieve by not paying attention to these errors, or to really be punishing. Let me give one example of being tolerant and perseverance of errors, and it's in football. So when as a football watcher, I watch football, I'm always surprised that it's really a billion euro industry. Clubs spend hundreds of millions on players. FIFA and UEFA, the football organizations, they really give a lot of money to teams that advance in the Champions League or in international tournaments. But they still accept that errors made by referees determine where the millions go. And again, I'm sure that referees are also human, so they will continue to make mistakes. So why do they do that? Because there are opportunities to solve the errors like they do in field hockey or in tennis. So there they use technology to solve the error and to repair the consequences of the error. And why doesn't it happen in football? Well, I don't really know. Well, it probably has something to do with conservatism. And so the FIFA is saying, well, some countries cannot afford this high technology, so we should be equal to all countries. But field hockey and tennis don't use the same technology everywhere. And the second argument they use is that it's part of the game. But this argument it doesn't make sense. Well, for instance, if you need an operation by a surgeon, and the surgeon would say, well, I can't afford, other people can't afford, other hospitals can't afford this high technology, so we won't use it on you either, you probably wouldn't accept it. So why don't organizations and individuals remix their reflex? It's simple, it's hard. It's very hard to change the way you have been operating for years and sometimes even decades. It's very hard to change habits. Well, you are here, so you are all in the mindset of remixing your reflex, but changing habits is difficult, and in organizations it takes months and sometimes takes years to really adapt to a new situation, to really gain the trust of employees that it's possible to admit your errors and to work with it. But it works, it helps. So some organizations are really able to be tolerant towards errors, yet still act on them and change the way they are working. And these organizations objectively tend to be more profitable, work safer, and have fewer negative consequences of errors they still will be making, but they are active and they are looking at it. So please be tolerant and take action and stop being diabolical. Thank you.